With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Prime Minister Nadir Arbawi is representing the President of the Republic in the 6th biannual meeting between the African Union, the regional economic communities and regional mechanisms in Accra, Ghana. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has said in Accra, Ghana that the activation of the African Humanitarian Agency would enshrine a purely African approach in the management of humanitarian issues. More airstrikes have been carried out by the Israeli army against various parts of the Gaza Strip, killing and wounding scores of Palestinians. Those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. The Speaker of the Russian State Duma Council, Volodyn Vyacheslav Viktorovich, will start tomorrow, Monday, an official visit to Algeria. The visit is an opportunity to give new impetus to relations linking the two countries, notably at the parliamentary level. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has congratulated Dr. Shamsuddin Abdelhali, who has offered Algeria for the very first time a gold medal at the International Mathematical Olympiad in Great Britain. The President also congratulated him for having obtained his baccalaureate with excellent rating. The President said such achievements make Algeria proud of her young people. Let's recall that Algeria achieved very honorable results during the 65th International Mathematical Olympiad, marked by the participation of delegations from 108 countries. The Secretary-General of the National Democratic Rally, also known as RND, Mr. Mustafa Yehi, has reiterated his support from the eastern city of Tbessa, his political party's support for Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the candidate for the presidential election on September 7th. Majid Mila has more details in this report.
Presiding over a meeting in Tbessa, Mr. Yahi said that Abdelmajid Tebboune, the candidate for the presidential election on September 7th, represents the best choice for implementing the comprehensive development policy designed by the Algerian people. He added that the qualitative leap made by Algeria in recent years in the fields of agriculture and investment and the implementation of major projects in the area, notably in the south of the country, will undoubtedly enable us to achieve self-sufficiency and food security in the next few years, making it necessary to back the support of Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune's candidacy. The Secretary General of the National Liberation Front, FLN party, Mr. Abdelkrim Ben Barak, for his part declared during a meeting held with the presidents of the transitional commissions and the elected assemblies that it was the responsibility of parties' militants to contribute to the success of the forthcoming elections in order to complete Algeria's development process. He also added that the FLN was calling for the mobilizations of all its militants and hailed in the same context the efforts made by the coalition of parties of the parliamentary majority for Algeria, bringing together the FLN, RND and El Mustaqbal Front, which early expressed its support to the candidacy of Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune.
Prime Minister Nadir Arbawi is taking part in the 6th biannual meeting between the African Union, the regional economic communities and the regional mechanisms in Accra, Ghana. Mr. Arbawi is taking part in the meeting in his capacity as representative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has said in Accra, Ghana that the activation of the African Humanitarian Agency would enshrine a purely African approach in the management of humanitarian issues. In a speech made during the 45th session of the Executive Council of the African Union relating to the provision on the activation of the African Humanitarian Agency, Mr. Attaf had the following.
We are convinced that the added value of activating the African Humanitarian Agency lies in the consecration of a purely African approach to humanitarian issues, an approach that takes account of the African reality and the exacerbation of crisis on our continent, and that upholds the values of solidarity and mutual aid that underpin the Pan-African project.
Meanwhile, the Algerian delegation congratulated the Republic of Uganda for having been chosen to host the headquarters of the African Humanitarian Agency, hailing it as a judicious choice and expressing its conviction that by hosting this mechanism, the sister country will mainly contribute to meeting the urgent humanitarian challenges facing our continent. The Executive Council of the African Union has approved its Continental Artificial Intelligence AI strategy and the African Digital Pact to boost Africa's digital development. The statement was made by the EU Commissioner for Infrastructure, Energy and Digitization, Amani Abu-Zaid, during the 45th Ordinary Session of the EU Executive Council held ahead of its 6th mid-year coordination meeting in the Ghanaian capital of Accra. Mrs. Abu-Zaid said that the Council approved the AU strategy for artificial intelligence and the strategy for the use of digital technologies, which will pave the way for Africa's use of digital technologies for development. She added that such strategies would provide guidelines on the use of technology to find solutions to Africa's challenges, help accelerate many projects and programs, and protest against the unethical use of technology. The Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, has met with the advisor to the President of the Republic of Nicaragua on economic affairs, Laureano Ortega Murillo. Asia Bakar has more details.
The meeting was held on the sidelines of the participation of Mr. Boughali in his capacity as representative of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, at the celebration of the 45th anniversary of the victory of the Sandinista Revolution. Mr. Ortega Murillo thanked Algeria for her participation at the celebration of his country's Victory Day while hailing the good relations linking the two friendly countries. He also discussed with Mr. Boughali ways and means to strengthen economic cooperation, notably trade and investment between the two countries. Mr. Boughali, for his part, highlighted Algeria's readiness under the leadership of President of the Republic to strengthen economic bilateral cooperation, calling for implementing an official framework to boost continuous communication between investors of both countries. The Speaker of the National People's Assembly also emphasized the need for promoting economic cooperation, highlighting the importance of a legislative body and a legal framework for investment. In this line, Mr. Ortega also called for the promotion of investment opportunities by providing the necessary means to attract investors from the two countries via authorized bodies to promote investment opportunities.
Algeria has warmly welcomed the advisory opinion issued by the International Court of Justice, which does justice to the Palestinian people by recognizing their legitimate rights, reflecting the continued efforts of the Security Council to enshrine the rights of Palestinians. More details in this report by Asia Bakar.
The Algerian Foreign Ministry said this historic step reminds the international community that the very essence of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict lies in the occupation's expansionist policies as they keep annexing by force the Palestinian territories by building settlement units without any limit or restriction. The Israeli expansionist policy is taking place with impunity. Algeria said the step taken by the ICJ also reveals that the objective behind the Israeli systematic violations is to derail the Palestinian national project and eliminate the two-state solution, enshrined and endorsed by international legality for more than 7 decades. Algeria said it will pursue her efforts at the Security Council to fulfill the rights of Palestinians, to end the Israeli aggression, particularly in the Gaza Strip, and allow Palestinians to establish their independent and sovereign state with Al-Quds as its capital, as a just, lasting, and definitive solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, so that security and stability could prevail throughout the Middle East.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. More airstrikes have been carried out by the Israeli army against various parts of the Gaza Strip, killing and wounding scores of Palestinians. Palestinian sources said at least 64 people were killed and more than 100 others were wounded for the past 24 hours in the bombardments that hit notably the central areas of Nusayrat and Deir el-Balah and of Khan Yunis in the southern part of the enclave. In this respect, yet one Palestinian journalist was killed in an airstrike targeting his house in Nusayrat, bringing the number of journalists killed so far in Gaza to 162. Over 9,700 Palestinians have been killed since the Israeli launched its attacks on Gaza nearly 10 months ago. Meanwhile, several countries, including Iran, Lebanon and several other European countries, have held the decision issued by the International Court of Justice regarding Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territories. The European Union's diplomacy chief hailed the ICJ's ruling as being highly coherent with the Union's positions. Iran also hailed the ruling, although it is not binding, as expressing the serious concerns regarding the violations and acts of aggressions carried out by the Israeli occupying authorities. In Yemen, the death toll in the attack carried out by the Israeli occupation army against the port city of Hodeidah has risen to 6. The health ministry affirmed that 8 other people were wounded in the attack, whereas 3 others are still reported missing. This came as the Houthi rebels, who are in control of Hodeidah, threatened to retaliate to the murderous attacks, raising fears about a new escalation in the region. The advisor to the Institutional Cooperation and International Solidarity of the Cabildo of Gran Canaria, Spain, Mr. Carmelo Ramirez, has stressed the need to enable the Sahrawi people to exercise their right to self-determination in accordance with the Charter and resolutions of the United Nations. He said it is essential that the issue of the Western Sahara, which has dragged on for more than 50 years, be resolved, as he welcomed 38 Sahrawi children taking part in the Holidays in Peace program. Regretting that the referendum that should enable the Sahrawi people to decide on their future has still not been held, the Spanish official recalled that the right to self-determination is a right recognized by the United Nations, which has still not been implemented in Western Sahara due to the obstacles made by the Moroccan occupier. Mr. Ramirez stressed the importance of humanitarian cooperation and called on the international community to respect the legitimate rights of the Sahrawi people. In Bangladesh judiciary has reduced and not abolished the system of quotas for candidates for civil service posts after their reintroduction in June sparked nationwide clashes that left 151 people dead. The Supreme Court has met to rule on whether or not to abolish the quotas, which were reintroduced last month and reserved 30% of posts for the children of veterans of Bangladesh War of Liberation against Pakistan. This category is reputed to be close to the current government. Attorney General A.M. Aminuddin said that the Supreme Court had ruled that the High Court verdict was illegal, referring to an earlier decision that had reintroduced the quotas. He added that 5% of civil service jobs would remain reserved for the children of veterans of the War of Independence and 2% for other categories. Meanwhile, the main group of students who launched the protest in Bangladesh shared their intention to continue the movement to denounce civil service recruitment quotas, despite the relaxation of the system announced by the Supreme Court, which urged student protesters to return to the classroom after it handed down its ruling. That's it for today's news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to a special program by my colleague Majid Mila.
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome on Radio Algeria International. Desertification is a major risk that threatens the arid and semi-arid regions throughout the globe. With continued population growth, it exacerbates while natural areas regress because of rapid urbanization, increase of cultivated land areas, overgrazing and deforestation. This adds to the effects of climate change. According to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, the recurring droughts and human activities are the main driving factors of desertification. It's widely recognized that the latter is a serious threat to arid and semi-arid environments, which cover more than 40% of the global land surface. On the occasion of the World Day to Combat Desertification and Drought, United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres said the following:
Humanity is waging a relentless, self-destructive war on nature. Biodiversity is declining, greenhouse gas concentrations are rising, and our pollution can be found from the remotest islands to the highest peaks. We must make peace with nature. The land can be our greatest ally, but the land is suffering. Land degradation from climate change and the expansion of agriculture, cities and infrastructure undermines the well-being of 3.2 billion people. It harms biodiversity and enables the emergence of infectious diseases such as COVID-19.
Algeria, as many countries, is not safe from this risk. Indeed, agronomists and ecologists report that alpha grass cover has reduced while the quality of the grasslands itself is becoming increasingly degraded. To tackle this serious risk, the Algerian authorities developed the Green Dam project as a massive reforestation program aiming to safeguard and to develop of the pre-Saharan areas. From Julfa or Provence, the southern part of Algeria, located at the foot of the Saharan Atlas, where the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, went as part of a working visit of inspection and kicked off the project to revive the Green Dam. The full-scale project aims to create wealth in vast regions of the country thanks to its new environmental and economic dimensions. In the region of Malba, a small rural town, a municipality, the vast steppe of Julfa at 1,170 meters above sea level, President Tebboune has planted a tree, thus symbolically relaunching the Green Dam project. A national strategic project whose socio-economic scope is considerable. The Green Dam was the subject of discussion and study during the Council of Ministers and led President Abdelmadjid Tebboune to say